Okay, let's welcome everybody. Let me see, microphone, video's on. Welcome everybody to our July 20th full Board of Estimate Taxation meeting, operating again under the new directive from the state, allowing us to have the electronic meetings and meeting the requirements thereof. Thank you, everybody. I'm
Mike,
sure.
are you recording?
That is my first thing. Let me do that very quickly. Stand by. We are recording. Thank you. With that, I'd like to call the meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. And we're waiting for the flag. There we go. Okay, everybody. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Our first item on the agenda, item number 2, is an executive session for pending litigation. This item has been through at least 2 of our committees. If there's a need for executive session, we will have to put down our cameras and mics and go into that with the new process. If not, we will proceed to the item reported by the committees and vote on it. Do I have a need?
Leslie's on.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a need for the executive session?
No.
Hearing none. First of all, I want to thank you just for everybody's edification and for the media. The town has a new system for the executive sessions. It's a new phone system. It's actually a Zoom product. It's very secure. It has a call-in number. It has a meeting number. It has a password, which is delivered to each of the people who are attending that day. The current system was just a phone extension to the town. So that's a new upgrade IT has done. I think I sent you out an email the other day with a little upgrade. I didn't know that the training session was going to go live for our very first meeting. So some of my apprehension was like, didn't know that was coming. So thank you. That brings us to our first non-routine item, SE1. Can I call on the chair of the law committee to get this item moved?
I move the item as it appears on the call.
Okay, that item has been moved by the law committee chair. Needs no second. We have 2 committee reports on that. The law committee followed by the budget committee, please.
Yes, the law committee heard from attorney Valerie Mays and who went through the merits of the case. The case involved a former employee, and the settlement recommended was $30,000. I won't go into the details of the case, but the law committee voted 2-0-0 to accept the settlement.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Tarkington, welcome.
Thank you. I had a problem getting in, so I thank you for being patient. As Ms. Fastulos reported, this is an additional settlement of $30,000 in the Martin versus the Town of Greenwich library case. The library has already settled. There was no additional discussion by the budget committee members, who voted 4-0-0 to approve and recommend this application.
Thank you, Ms. Tarkington. Discussion on the item. Obviously, today we'll use our normal raising of the hands if you'd like to speak. Seeing none, can I ask Mr. Drake for a roll call vote on this item?
Yes. We'll call this item SB1. And I got the wrong page here. I'm going to start with the faces as I see them on the screen. Mr. Weisbrod.
Yes.
Mr. Raymer.
Yes.
Mr. Deuce.
Yes.
Ms. Hess.
Yes.
Ms. Cruiser.
Yes.
Ms. Krummick.
Yes.
Ms. Moriarty.
Yes.
Ms. Fasliotis.
Yes.
Ms. Erickson.
Yes.
Ms. Tarkington.
Yes.
And I'm a yes, that's unanimous.
I didn't hear Mr. Mason call.
Don't I get to vote?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Mason?
I am no on this item.
Okay, that vote was 11-1. The item passed.
Thank you, thank you. And again, I do thank everybody for doing all the homework behind this on the at the committee level. Before PD1 comes before us, Mr. Camillo.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Wanted to chat real quickly about the body camera initiative. We plan to put this before the RTM in September. I understand that there are some questions on both sides of the aisle here, and we'll work with you to get you those answers offline, but we are definitely going to go ahead with this for September. Just so you know, some numbers have been floating around out there. The first year, we're looking at about a little over $310,000, and in years 2 through 5, a little over 173. But we believe that every town every municipality in the state of Connecticut will have these. We're trying to be proactive. We think ultimately it will clear up a lot of doubt and help our men and women in blue as much as the citizens as far as protection goes. And money-wise, it probably could save us a lot of money down the line when it comes to litigation that probably was not valid. And so we think this is a proactive thing to do, and I know the police chief is very much in support of it. And I know, in speaking with many of you, that you've expressed support for it, but the questions are legitimate and valid. So we will work with you offline to get you all those answers to those questions and all your concerns addressed. But happy to answer anything you have now with whatever information that I have.
So my question to you is, are you asking us to postpone action on this item till we get that feedback? I know we have plenty of time before we get to the RTM's agenda, and I know you'll go for a placeholder there, and we have meetings subsequent to that too.
Yeah, what I'm saying is, we're going to go ahead with it no matter what. Usually it goes before the BET, before the RTM, but we could just put it on the agenda for September, and then work with you with the action by the BET pending the answers to your questions. I don't have all of them right now. I know we're in the process of getting some of those for you. So whatever I support whatever you all want to do on this, but we will get you the answers. Right now, it's no sense me saying, trying to answer something if we don't have the specific answers to your specific questions. So happy to, again, circle back with you all offline and get anything answered as soon as we have the answers to them. But I'm very supportive of it, as you know, as is the chief, and I think all of you have expressed support for it too. But you're asking questions, and they're very legitimate questions, and you'd rather have all your T's crossed and I's dotted before going forward. I get that, and we're going to do it. I think we all know that we're going to do this. It just, whether you commit right now or we get it done in September, up to you.
So my thought is, first of all, I'm appreciative of this. That yes, you are correct. There has been a lot of dialogue and questions back and forth with multiple departments, and we have the chief has scheduled an informational session for us on this for Thursday coming up, and we do have our regular meeting. So, I mean, I would entertain if you wanted to withdraw this and push this to our next meeting, we could do that. That would probably be the easiest way. I personally, thinking this sort of development now, seeing all the questions, I would probably look to add a couple of our members to be the go-to on this, to get these answers questioned. I mean, there was some questions about the contract this morning about whether we have to appropriate and pay for the contract in its entirety or if it's year by year. There was lots of really good questions, and I would if you're asking us to postpone this till our next meeting, I I would entertain that through our board. So it's really your call on this.
Sure. I mean, we tend to get this done in September, the RTM, to get it to them. So if you need some more time, that's fine. I'd rather you have the answers and be secure with your vote than go into it, half-hearted. So
Okay.
I'm happy to do that.
I'll open this up for quick discussion with the members. The item's not moved in before us actually yet. That's why I thought it was appropriate for the first selectman to speak. We have a regular set of meetings beforehand. And obviously we know that in the next 9 weeks, we probably have a lot of projects that we're working on and we'll need some feedback. I leave it up to the group. We can easily roll this to our next meeting. I would say if we're going to do that, I'm going to ask Ms. Fascilotis and Ms. Moriarty to sort of attach themselves to this to try to come up with the catalog, all the questions and everything and work and get this while we're going through the process of learning this. So I'd leave it to a sort of a discussion on your feelings on this. Mr. Raymer, followed by Ms. Moriarty.
So a couple of things. First of all, from the standpoint of the simple optics, I would rather see this body act on it today. Whether or not the first selectman chooses to withdraw the item or not, that's entirely the first selectman's prerogative. That's not ours to speak to. But unless he's choosing to withdraw it, I would favor having this board not postpone it, but have them act on the item. I have two things. One, as I look at this contract, this is a contract that commits us to the full $1,002,902 paid over 5 years. And I don't think a department can sign a contract committing the town to those payments when the appropriation has not been authorized. So unless there's a structure in this contract that allows the town the prerogative under the contract to withdraw or go forward year by year, I'm sorry, my voice is hoarse. I think the amount has to be amended to reflect the full $1 million in small change, not act on it as being an item at $310,022. I'd be interested in the advice that we're getting from the controller and budget manager on that question, if I have it correctly. The second thing is this. I think a lot of the questions are questions that'll be resolved in the implementation process. So questions, for example, of should we stay with just the 30 days of storage, or should we be opting for 60 or 90 or more days of storage? If so, what do those cost? I think those items we can resolve as we move forward. Exactly what will be the protocol at the department for the turning on and off of cameras, for the handling of FOI requests for tapes. I think those two we can deal with as we go along. For myself, I'm clear in my mind that I want to do body cameras, and it won't matter to me what the answer to the questions are. I may opt for 90 days of coverage on the storage, or I may not, but certainly I'm in favor of the body cameras. And given today's optics of Black Lives Matter and George Floyd and all the rest of the climate here, I think the optics are poor for us to postpone this item. I think we should show our support for it by approving this item, and we can answer the questions and take care of the fine details over the months that follow. So I would defer entirely to the first selectman if he wishes to withdraw, but if he doesn't wish to withdraw, I'm encouraging this board to go forward with it, but on an amended amount at the 1 million and small change.
So,
Thank you, thank you. And again, obviously an open question. Ms. Moriarty?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that the September BET meetings, our full BET meeting is the same day as the RTM meeting, which means our committee meetings are before, and most of them, for example, Budget Committee, I believe, is a Tuesday, which is after the RTM committee meets. So while our vote as our board will come before the full BET, the RTM committees do not have the benefit of the information and discussion of the BET, which has always been helpful to the RTM. So I'm a little concerned with putting off the discussion till September. I get that we don't have all the information we would like to know about this project at this point, but I do agree with Jeff that this is an important initiative that this town has. I know it's been on the back burner for many years and hasn't been put forward, and I appreciate the fact that it's being pushed forward now, and I don't want to see that slowed down or disadvantaged in any way because of the timing of our meetings.
Thank you. I'm just checking my screen. I see no other hands.
So basically, Mr. Chairman, if I can add something.
Please do.
So I agree with all that's been said. We're going to get this done, and it's going to get done, sooner rather than later. But I do respect when people have questions, and I'm willing to withdraw it right now. But we are going to go ahead with it, and whether September or October, we'll have it. I think people are generally in favor of this. Whether it's 30 days sooner, if that's what it takes to get your questions answered, we'll do that. I want to act in good faith with everybody here, and we've heard some questions. Some are very legitimate, and I understand that. So if I don't have the exact answer, we'll get it to you. But I'm happy to do that so you have your questions answered. But we make no mistake about it. The reason why we put this out there is we want to get it done. And there's no stalling at all. We want to get it done. But certainly, we don't want to lead with our face either. If we need to use a boxing term, if you have some questions, we'll get them answered.
Mr. Drake has his hand up.
Yes.
Roland just got his hand up, Mike, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah, Roland did. Roland, please go first.
Just to Jeff's question about appropriating the entire amount of the contract. We have many multi-year contracts, and we only budget 1 year at a time. For example, we have ADP, which was a 5-year contract, over $900,000 a year. We only budget 1 year at a time. Finance has a multi-year contract with the external auditors, and we only budget 1 year at a time. So,
But on those contracts, Roland, when you have an ADP contract, are you committed now to years 2, 3, 4, 5, et cetera? Or are you committing yourself 1 year at a time? Because this contract, to my eye, commits us to all 5 years.
the ADP contract was for 5 years, but we only budget 1 year at a time. I mean, we could, there are penalty clauses, especially in ADP, if we got out before the first 3 years or something like that. But this is pretty common.
Roland, so ADP then has a clause that allows you to exit but pay a penalty. This doesn't have an exit clause. This is merely a commitment for 5 years of payments. Now, there's a difference to my mind with that. I don't know, and your other examples, I don't know at all. But it seems to me that that our charter says that no town department can commit to sums for which there has not been an appropriation. And if I read this contract correctly, I may not, Amanda's on the line. If I read this contract correctly, you sign the contract, we're committed to make the payments for year 2, 3, 4, et cetera. And I don't know if that's appropriate. I don't know why we wouldn't then commit a capital item, commit for the $1 million with the funding to follow 1 year at a time. I see Pete has his hand up.
Yes. If you're done, Mr. Raymer, I'd like to call on.
I'm sorry, done.
I want to go back to Roland first, then Peter, then back to Bill Drake. Roland, do you have anything, or should I go to?
Maybe go to Pete. I don't have the language of the ADP contract right in front of me, or the one with the external auditors.
Peter?
Just to follow up, most, and I'm going to defer to Amina and Vin, most of the contracts I've seen have provisions in the back that say subject to appropriation. I haven't seen this contract or agreement, whatever it is. My question is there a provision in there that says subject to appropriation? And what if this firm goes out of business? I'm talking about the software piece.
Amina, are you?
Jim Heavey is in the attendees. I'm going to bring him over. He has his hand up.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, it's Vin Marino, Town Attorney.
Welcome. Good to see you.
Hi. Thank you. I have not reviewed this contract. I don't know if Amina has, but generally speaking, there would be an appropriations clause in the contract that would, in the event that the money was not appropriated in future years, the town would be excused from the contract provisions.
Mr. Mason, Mr. Mason,
Yes, Ms. Krumik.
can we ask the town attorney to not be driving when he's involved in this? I'm concerned because we're seeing him looking down at his screen, and I sure as heck wouldn't want to see an accident because he's on a phone with us.
Oh, I apologize. I was just putting my phone up so it did not move. I'm about 3 minutes away from my parking lot. But I will not raise your concern but I appreciate the concern.
Amina, have you seen this one?
Yes. Mr. Chairman, good afternoon. I have not seen this particular contract, but I just finished working with the police department on a new dispatch system for the department. There was an issue there again, similar to what Mr. Raymer just mentioned. It obligated us for several years. So just last week, I drafted a non-appropriation clause, and we negotiated that into the agreement for the new dispatch system for the police department. But to answer your question, I have not seen the specific contract. I'm happy to do so and use similar language to make sure we're not bound several years down the road in terms of the appropriation.
Thank you. Mr. Raymer's hands is up again. You got to unmute yourself.
Aren't I better muted? I don't know.
You're muted.
I mean, that's an appropriate solution. Either one, we could approve this contract if the first selectman wishes us to. We could approve this contract subject to Amina's ability to gain acceptance from Exxon of that additional paragraph. The existing contract, Amina, is in the call, and the contract itself is 1 7-line paragraph. It's not complicated, unless there's a page of terms and conditions that we haven't been shown. But once again, I'd like to see us act on it unless the first selectman is withdrawing it.
I don't see other hands up. Mr. Drake, I have to get back to you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Mr. Camillo and Mr. Hebe for their leadership in energetically pushing this forward. It's forward thinking, and we're getting ahead of problems. You know, we have an excellent police force here. We do not have the problems of the Minneapolis police force, but we want to be on the leading edge of technology and governance. And this thing just calls out for a very thorough and deliberate look, like we give everything we touch here in the BET. You know, some of the questions that deserve to be answered are, you know, how does this massive collection of video data get served under FOIA? And when it is served, how do we edit the juveniles out for their proper privacy? How do we edit out privacy matters that relate to domestic violence? That we have to be sure that we don't make domestic violence problems worse and conflicts worse. There's a question about storage policy and cost. There's a lot of questions that deserve answers, and I think that's always been the spirit in which we work here as the 12 of us. So I think, unless somebody else thinks not, I think the principle of getting body cameras has the support of 12 members of the BET. anyone wishes to oppose it, speak up. But I think that the right thing to do is, as we always do, examine this with due deliberation, get the questions answered, coordinate our actions with the likely mandate that will come from Hartford and the state, so that we don't do this twice, but we do it once, right? I think everybody wants to see it happen. I certainly want to see it happen. But the right thing to do seems to be to do our homework in a thorough way, have our committees or at least 2 designated members circle back with the review and take this up at a subsequent meeting.
Ms. Krubik's hands up.
Just a quick question, whether we could have a straw poll to see where we all stand before we start moving to either postpone or vote on it. I'm just curious. It sounds like at least 2 people are for it in principle, but not ready to. But I'm curious where the 12 of us are at this point.
I'll respond. We normally don't do straw polls. We have an item that's either going to be before us or not. I can only speak for myself. I think Mr. Drake has probably made the accurate statement. I don't think there's anybody here against this. I think it's just a question of we're seeing questions coming up 5 minutes before this meeting about how we appropriate the contract. I mean, in recent times, I think there's been some communications about the BET's actions without all the homework being done. And there's 12 of us. This is an item. I really think that we can keep this on its regular time track because we do have our meetings ahead of time. And I'm sure we can, especially if we put a couple members towards on it. As it is the first selectman's choice. It's not going to affect the timeline RTM, in my opinion. But I think this is the open questions. And when the 230 RTM members, they're going to have the same questions. So I think if we, I just think it's better to have the information. This is a tremendous initiative, and I can understand why it's never been before the BET before, because it has nothing to do with the current. This has been talked about in the front office a couple times with law enforcement. There was always questions. This Thursday, the legislature in the state is about to put through some legislation on police. And as of this Thursday, this may be a non-conversation. It may be a mandatory item by state law. But I also, for the first time, am looking at there's a possible reimbursement. It's not a reimbursement to buy. You have to buy them and then get reimbursed, I should say. I think we would want to know the answers to that as well. So again, this is all good conversation. As far as your straw poll, Beth, I can't feel any vibe that anybody is against this initiative.
I guess my only concern is that what we talk about in terms of timing, if we have to wait until our September meeting, and our September meetings same night as the RTM, it gives the RTM no time to know where we stand. I agree that we need to study it. Certainly a lot of issues that are clearly have been put forward in the last 20 minutes. So I don't disagree that we need to think about them. But I wonder if we may end up having some special meeting or very short meeting to rule on it well before the RTM is actually going to take it up.
That is the will of the board. I mean, it wouldn't be the first time, but that's the will of the board. Let me just continue on with those who have their hands raised. Mr. Weisbrod, followed by Ms. Hess, followed by Ms. Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question from Chief Heavey. Just from a logistics perspective, obviously the options here are you folks withdraw the request and, we wait until September. But if you do that, my question is, does that delay the engagement and the ability to sign a contract? I'm imagining that there are many, many municipalities across the country that are moving in the same direction. And, if we go in the back of a queue because others move quicker and so forth in terms of the ability to get a contract reviewed, discussed, and, committed to, subject to the RTM approval, whether that will interfere with your execution of the plan in a timely manner. It's a question for the chief.
Trying to be thoughtful in my response. I think that for over 5 years, I've pursued getting body cameras as I recognize that, as I've stated in a number of occasions, that there are two types of agencies that are police agencies in the state of Connecticut, those with body cameras and those that will have them. The state legislature is looking now at qualified immunity and removing that from law enforcement. We have 46 or 48 officers eligible for retirement. I think the body cameras would do a lot of, go a long way on transparency and accountability, and I think it would reduce liability. I tried to answer all the questions that were presented to me by the BET in advance of this meeting. However, I guess there were more questions that came about this morning while I was driving back. I think that if any delay, and again, will a month or two matter? I can't say. I know that there is currently a grant program that perhaps will reimburse us for 1/2 of the expended amount on the first year. I don't know where that grant will go once other agencies may either be compelled by statute or by circumstance to purchase the body cameras. So I really can't guesstimate on what a delay might cause. I understand that all the due diligence needs to be done first. I would, I guess, request that the BET members with the questions communicate them to myself and the police commissioner so that we could address those. Any of the questions that arose at and following the budget committee meeting that were asked of me, I got back within 24 hours. And again, there are some technicalities. I consulted the legal department, Tom Klein, in regards to cybersecurity, risk management. So we're trying to address all those issues. So I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. I guess that's a long answer to a long question.
But I get the gist that you and maybe I'm reading it wrong, but I want to ask it, that you would favor moving forward on this, and any residual questions can be raised as you have been in 24 hours. Your preference would be to get the vote and get it approved, if I'm hearing you right.
Correct. And between now and the RTM meeting, we certainly continue to address any outlying concerns that you or any other members of the BET have. You could certainly put conditions on its approval prior to it being presented at the RTM. And there'd be a number of committees of the RTM that I would have to meet with between now and September so that they would have a greater understanding of the project as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Hess?
Hi, I just wanted to respond, I guess, to Beth. I understand why we don't like to do, formal straw polls, but I am supportive. I voted in favor of it. I did at the time raise some questions, and I think they've been answered. But I just think about risk, HR matters, cyber, and I think that there's been some back and forth going around. So my view is it would be nice to tighten some of that up. But I am supportive of this program. I do believe we will have it in place, as Fred and Chief Heavey has said. So I do think we'll get there. If we could tighten it up in terms of some of the questions, I think that would be better, especially just even the question on the contract and making sure we have an appropriation clause in there, so that we don't have to worry about, do we have to appropriate for more than 1 year or not. So I just think there's enough out there that would be great to tighten up, but I did want to go on the record to say I am supportive and will vote in favor of this, just to put it out there.
Ms. Erickson?
Yes, thank you. Chief Heavey, my only financial question that's outstanding, and I believe you've already asked the company to supply a revised quote with the increased retention as advised by our town attorney. So if you have any indication from the company when you might get an answer to that, that would be helpful. And then I just have one additional comment after that.
The updated estimate actually was less than the previous one, but I say that only with the caveat that I have to check to make sure all the details are equal, but it actually was less than the quote they gave us back in November. So I'll have to double check on that. And I suspect that if there's a change in the storage requirement because of FOI, that all the other agencies that are already complying with it are following that. So that's probably what they'll include, is whatever the statutory requirement is. So, but I'll have those details as soon as they're needed. And like I said, I just don't have them in front of me.
Okay, but it doesn't sound like the 310 figure is too far off based on your request for a revision to the
Correct.
pack.
It's very close. It actually,
Okay.
Greg Hannigan was going over the numbers, and I was on the phone in the car this morning and said that that they looked actually that was a little bit less. But I'm going to go through it line item by line to make sure that there wasn't anything omitted in the updated quote.
All right, so given that information, I am comfortable moving forward. I would say that this is not the purview of the finance board, but I looked at your policy. I thought it was very thorough. But there are some questions. This is not for me to say or anyone else to say. I'm sure you are very thoughtful about this, but I think about the school resource officers at the high school, for example, and I wonder, does the BOE need to have some dialogue? Is there some policy that overlaps? So these are
two
things
things.
that will be worked out, but
Right. Two things is an MOI with, I've already spoken with the superintendent in regards to an MOU between the Board of Ed and the police department to calm those fears. And then the second thing is the videoing of students at the high school. There is video monitoring in certain areas. That has a program that redacts juveniles not involved in the incident that they might be looking at. So the technology is there so that we can protect the privacy of what was mentioned before, domestic violence victims and other sensitive conditions like when there's a juvenile present. So that technology is part of the evidence.com package so that we could assure that privacy is there. But we have an MOU with the Board of Education, and it would be slightly modified based on the fact that we're providing 2 officers to the high school, and the MOU says 1, but we would have that would be one of the things we could probably modify as well, and also indicate that what the procedures would be if the body cameras were activated while they're SRO or not any other officer, in fact, was at the high school or in any other place where there's a juvenile present.
Thank you. I mean, I will say some of that video footage, having been involved in expulsion hearings, is very helpful. And I agree with everything you say. There is protections for minors. So given your answers, I, for one, I'm comfortable moving forward based on the number being the right number, give or take.
Has everybody had the opportunity to speak? Fred, you can
Sure.
and I would just leave the call to you.
Yeah, I know you guys got to get on with the rest of your agenda. So yeah, I will withdraw it, knowing it's not going to affect the timeline at all. I understand the frustrations of not doing it right now. It's the same way I felt when some of my friends across the aisle here were questioning the Roger Sherman Baldwin Park redo or pay as you throw. And you know what? Questions are questions, and that's a good thing. So this one here, it's a little different because it doesn't affect the timeline that much. So I sense that you're all supportive of this, and I've heard some questions on both sides that really were not answered, but we'll get them to you right away as soon as we can. So I know it's not going to affect anything, so happy to withdraw it, and we'll circle back with you offline, get you the answer that you need, and then we'll go forward with this. But we'll get it done.
I appreciate that. Can I ask 2 of our members? I have to find you first. Ms. Moriarty, Ms. Fascilotis, can you fast track a project for us to build a document? Because for us, as fast as we can, to take and lay out all the questions, get a response, and get that back to us as information, and we can decide if we want to accelerate a meeting to look at that, and then obviously have that material made available for the RTM. Is that something that can I beg of you to undertake?
Only if I can get a week's vacation in.
No.
No, I think
Just be careful where you go to.
I'm teasing. I'll be here.
Ms. Moriarty?
no, that's fine. I don't even need to make you beg.
No, I appreciate that. And I think, Fred, we're in an interesting time now, budget-wise, and with everything going on. And we may be talking to you about accepting grants and COVID monies, and we may be talking to the schools. We're working on some common dialogue right now to, we know we're not dealing with a normal time frame in the town, but I think this is something, I don't want to disrupt the chief's presentation to us on Thursday. I think that'll be fantastic, and I think we just fast track this and get this back. So, Mr. Weisbrod, your hand is up. So if anybody, unless anybody has an objection with that, I'd like to proceed that way if possible. Mr. Weisbrod's hand's up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So let me just make sure I'm clear. The chief has expressed the interest to get this voted on today. The first selectman has decided to withdraw. I'm certainly prepared to support the chief in voting on this and getting this approved. But nevertheless, in light of the first selectman's decision to withdraw, I would like to get a sense that we would meet prior to the September meeting to not put any, to not put any undue pressure on the RTM and to ensure that we move with the appropriate dispatch and getting this done. So I think it's incumbent upon us to meet in August or, whenever all the facts are delineated, so that we can have a quick meeting, vote on this, get it approved, and then have it ready to go so we don't delay anything. Is that the spirit of others on the BET? And in any event, I'd like to express that. Thank you.
I'll clarify what I said. I'm asking two of our members to fast track a project to be able to, whatever time availability we have, we're on Zoom, obviously, to be able to give us the presentation of the questions and the answers so we can act accordingly. I see no other hands up. Okay. Fred, Chief Hebe, thank you. We'll fast track this and we'll be back with you this Thursday, correct? We'll be with you, Chief. You want to give us an update on that?
Well, again, it's still being reviewed by the law department, but what we were trying to do is invite members of the BET to a presentation by Axon, which is the company that we'd like to purchase the body cameras from. And unfortunately, their representative is from Ohio, which is one of the states that's been identified as a state that their residents can't visit. So it's going to be a Zoom presentation by the Axon Corporation person to maybe give you some more, probably give you more questions than more answers, but to give you an opportunity to speak to a subject matter expert in regards to the body cameras.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else's hands up? Thank you, everyone. That brings us to our routine applications. Mr. Drake, if you would, can you?
We have two routine applications today. FI1 from Finance, $882,864, which is the closeout of the bond authorization. And SL1 from the School Lunch Fund, $27,000 transfer, which is associated with transporting food to those that needed it in our town.
Can I get a second on that?
Second.
Second by Ms. Tarkington. Discussion. Can I do a? Is there anyone again?
As clerk, I could do it. Is there anybody opposed?
Okay.
I think that was unanimous.
I'll call that 1200. Let me just write that down. Okay, that brings us to the assessor's report. And our assessor's here with us. I just need to, oh, Ms. Vassilotis is way ahead of me. Hello.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman and fellow members of the BT. I'd like to present the assessment report for July 2020. First of all, the tax bills were sent out on June 25th, and we're currently working with the tax collector's office dealing with any inquiries and questions, and for the most part, it's going quite smoothly. Number two, we're going to start sending residential appraisers out into the field. We're not going to be knocking on doors just yet. We're going to be doing as much of the new construction and what have you without actually dealing with the homeowner at the moment. In the next couple of weeks, we'll see how this goes. And then we'll start either trying to make appointments with the homeowners or in certain instances where there's just construction sites, I believe we can get onto the site without any issues. We're going to start doing the field work this week. And it's just going to be for new construction and building permits. We are not starting the inspection process for the VIA. We're not resuming that just yet. We're going to wait on that until things start to open up a little bit more. Okay. In regards to the revaluation of 2020, as you know, the first selectman sent a letter to OPM requesting the 2020 revaluation be moved to October 1st, 2021. We did get a response from the Office of Policy and Management, and they stated that they shall respond favorably to our waiver. What needs to happen is in a revaluation year, after I sign the grand list, the first selectman sends a letter and he either says, yes, I implemented a revaluation, or no, I didn't. He will have to send a letter after I sign the grand list that I did not implement a revaluation, but OPM is willing to waive any penalties or concerns that we have. So we are all set, I believe, for doing the evaluation in 2021. And finally, we have one more additional tax appeal that was filed. It was a commercial tax appeal, so now we're up to 7 tax appeals on the ground list of 2019. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Lauren, just to clarify, the letter to OPM has to go after you sign the grand list, and that occurs in January of 2020, correct? I mean,
Right.
2021, I'm sorry.
Right, correct. In a revaluation year, you always send, the first selectman always sends a letter to the to Office of Policy Management, either A, stating that we implemented a revaluation, or no, we didn't. We're going to send it saying that we did not. But the statute, we basically sent a letter a little in advance so that we would know how Office of Policy and Management would react to that, or react to our request.
Any other hands up? I see no hands up. Can I get a motion to?
I move that we accept the report.
Seconded.
Moved by Ms. Tarkington, second by Mr. Raymer. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll put that down as 1200. Thank you.
Thank you.
That brings us to the comptroller's report. And
Good afternoon, everyone.
top left corner.
A couple of updates, and then I'll open it up for questions with the controller's report. Update on the fire study for the 8 BET members that are not on the steering committee. It consists of BET members, Weisbrot, Mason, Fosciolatus, and Raymer. We got the report the end of May. The steering committee met internally without Matrix and came up with a series of questions and sent them to Matrix. And the steering committee, along with the controller and the town administrator, Ben Branyan, had a Zoom meeting on the 29th. And there were some additional questions that were presented. And we've been promised an updated draft of the Matrix Fire Study report this week. We'll regroup and look at the report again, and we'll meet again with Matrix. And I believe, and someone can correct me later after I do my updates, the next step was to share it with the fire department. So the steering committee will be working on this over the summer. Retirement board on page 2, the actuary, Greg Stump from Boomershine, met with the OPEB, after the OPEB meeting, the IAC committee this morning. They went over some OPEB updates as far as changing the assumptions in a variety of different topics. The actuary is preparing his preliminary report, which he does every July, and he's going to present it to the retirement board meeting. The retirement board is meeting next Thursday on the 30th. It's preliminary. There'll be a second special meeting, and this is all noted in the controller's report, to discuss, among other items, the movement of probably down of the assumption in the interest rate assumption and discount rate. There's an opening on the retirement board. Captain Kordick left, as we all know, a few months ago. The election is this Friday, so we should have a fifth member by next Thursday's meeting. One more update and then open it to questions is on the tax deferment program. We discussed it this morning so this is more for members of the BET that were not in attendance for the IAC meeting. Noted in the controller's report, we're doing well. We, as of last Thursday, we collected 60 million. Since Thursday, we collected another 7 million. So we're up to 67 million, which excludes the escrow payments, which are not subject to deferment. We, as discussed at the IAC meeting this morning, it looks like we do not have any cash flow problems. So we're doing well with the, as far as the tax collection receipts for the month of July. Open it up to any of the topics I discussed or any other questions in the controller's report.
I see Ms. Hess. Please use your blue hands. It's easier for me.
Sorry about that. So Pete, just one thing at the end of your report, you talked about the money coming back for MISA, and I think it was Hamilton Ave. They weren't bonded. So when that money, where does that come? I mean, it seems like it might be, I'm sorry, I was trying to find you on the screen. It might be a little bit before we get it, but when we do get it, would that go into capital non-recurring or does it go into the general fund?
General fund. It's, Roland and I discussed this last week when I put it in the report. It's like the bridges,
Okay.
where the money comes back into the general fund.
Okay, thank you.
I'll deviate and cover this right now. This is an item that's sort of under, I put it under old business school reimbursements. It ties into a few things in this report. At our organizational meeting, I asked Leslie Moriarty and Leslie Tarkington to please follow up on making sure that all the applications to the state were in proper order, because we were told at that time that if you didn't file by a June something deadline, the town may forfeit the ability to file this. And this was a long project that had been running for quite some time on the projects before New Leb School. New Leb School, that we had a clerk of the works that did all the paperwork and set things up for the Board of Ed's filing. The two Leslies have accomplished it, and they did it with a few weeks to spare. And Peter, just remind me how many $1 million they're filing to recapture?
Well, it's noted on the last page of the
But people that are watching aren't seeing.
controls report, but I'll expand upon that answer. There is, if you got a copy of the report, the simple answer is that MISA is 4.9, almost $5 million. And then Hamilton Avenue, to follow up to Ms. Hess's question, $1,864,000. The $1.8 million would go in the general fund, and the 4.9 goes to the bonded capital projects. We also have money coming back from the Glenville project. All of these projects, money is held back through a term called retainage, and they're subject to audit. So to answer your question, there's probably there's about $8 million in total between the four projects that are out there, the Glenville School, Hamilton Avenue, MISA. Actually, it's more. I don't know the final numbers on New Lebanon. So there's probably about six to seven on the three projects mentioned, and then there's the New Lebanon. There's over $10 million out there.
So to our, I say our, Ms. Tarkington, Ms. Moriarty, thank you. This is important follow-up, and we're under new business. We have another building committee that's about to be formed as per, and I'll explain when we get to there. But again, crucial. This is, as we talked this year during the budget about how we were trying to adapt to the COVID. This is a huge amount of money coming back, and it took a lot of work. And there was a point in time where there was even a question out there whose responsibility was it to go and file and get that back. So I just think it's appropriate for us to thank the two members that really just stayed with it right to the end until we got filed. So I think that's really important. So thank you.
Mr. Mason, may I just give the numbers? Because I think MISA numbers were 4 million.
Yeah, Peter just gave it to us.
He gave a summary though. So
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Can I just add too, that this really was, the Board of Education, Sean O'Keefe and his staff is the one that really did the work in the filing, and Leslie and I were the supporting role. But, with all the responsibilities and the other things happening with the Board of Ed, I think a great deal of credit goes to them for paying attention to details, knowing what they had to do, but getting it done on time.
We're hearing quite a bit of that lately about the paying attention to details and and we're seeing tremendous progress. So, and I think, I do think the Board of Ed and Sean really are part of this too, but it took a lot of pressure from us too. So anything else in the controls report? Ms. Moriarty, no? Can I get a motion we accept the controls report?
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved by Ms. Tarkington, second by Ms. Moriarty. Do I have everybody in favor? Any?
Aye.
I'm going to put that down as 1200. That brings us to the treasurer's report for the preceding month. I did attend the audit committee meeting, and I saw that presentation, the meetings this morning, and I saw that presentation, and I thought that was, Mr. Weisbrot even commented on it before. That was fantastic. Can I get a motion we accept?
So moved. We accept the treasurer's report.
Moved by Ms. Tarkington, seconded by
Me.
Mr. Raymer. Thank you. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed or abstaining?
I abstain.
Okay, so that vote is 1101. Ms. Crumick abstaining. Okay. Moving on. BET Standing Committee reports. I see nothing. Let me just make sure I don't miss anything. Special project teams. I'm not going to call, it's not on our agenda, but I again, Ms. Moriarty, Ms. Fascilonis, thank you. And we're looking for your leadership on this so we can wrap up this item that we had. Old business I covered. New business. The Greenwich High School project at the Greenwich High School is called the Greenwich High School Phase 1 Security Entrance Building. The item, as I understand it, has had feasibility study. Architectural engineering has been approved. The Board of Ed has approved a set of ed specs. The next step in the town process is a building committee. This building will qualify for reimbursement from the state. The Board of Selectmen, let me correct that. The Board of Selectmen will be nominating members to serve on this from the RTM. The Board of Education gets a seat on the committee. The Board of Estimate and Taxation gets a seat on the committee. And I believe I'm missing one seat, and I'm sure I'll get corrected on that. Ms. Moriarty and I were on the feasibility committee. And what's happened in the past, when there's a feasibility committee, you tend to you're prepping for the building committee. Ms. Moriarty served on MISA, so as I said earlier, when we were starting the two meetings, I asked some questions about this to Ms. Tarkington and Ms. Moriarty, and I'm going to take this building committee. I've never been on a building committee before, and this one is about security and a building, and I probably have more time to do it now. But I am going to ask for the support of our two Leslies who have enormous experience in this. Mr. Drake has served, some of our other members have served. So unless there's nothing on that, and I think the next process in that will be at the RTM in September. And from there, the project will take off. Does everybody understand where this building is located, by the way? This is in the front circle at the high school. This is an addition, and it'll meet lots of different requirements, but it actually does modify the hallway, what we call the glass hallway a little bit. And it was a pretty detailed feasibility study. It'll have centralized communications. There'll be a lot of improvements for security, and then the Board of Ed has got a complete plan. They're going to roll out how they plan on using it, and that's part of their discussions to date. So, discussion?
No, since you're a graduate, you're the right guy.
Thanks.
I just want to Can I clarify one thing you made in your comments, just for anyone listening? You indicated that the Board of Selectmen appoints members. You said from the RTM. They appoint members from the public. The RTM gets one assigned I think it's an ex officio seat. Thank you.
Thank you. No, that is true. So with that, we're not going to hear much about this until September. Okay. I have nothing else under new business, but I would call on Mr. Drake. I believe there's conversation about adding an item to our agenda.
Yes, thank you. I think we had some emails back and forth about adding the final layer of coverage to the town's casualty insurance policies. This was talked in my committee members from the audit committee, please pipe up and help me. But the short of it was the markets have tightened. They were very expensive this year. All the costs went up and some layers, highest layer was not available at first. But with the good help of our risk manager, we now have a proposal to buy the final layer, and help me with the math. It's the layer that goes from 25 million to 30 or 35?
No, from 30 to 35 million. It's from the North River Insurance Company. It's at a premium of 107,815.
Just so everybody is aware, Megan is on the call now, so she can
let her do that.
Go through it all.
Megan, before I let you lead us on this, I do need a motion to pass with a 2/3 vote to add an item on our agenda, and I'm going to consider the motion to Mr. Raymer. Would you like to make a motion?
Yeah, I would move that we add to the agenda an item for the approval by the BET of some additional insurance.
And I'll second Mr. Raymer's motion.
Okay, that motion is not debatable. That requires a 2/3 vote to add this item to our, under new business, to our agenda. So, Mr. Drake, I'm going to ask you to just do a quick roll call vote on this.
You bet. This is adding an item. Ms. Cruiser?
Yes.
Ms. Hess?
Yeah.
Ms. Crumick?
Yes.
Ms. Moriarty?
Yes.
Ms. Tarkington?
Yes.
Mr. Mason?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Ms. Basiliotis?
Yes.
Mr. Raymer?
Yes.
Mr. Deuce?
Yes.
Mr. Weisbrod?
Yes.
Ms. Erickson?
Yes.
That was unanimous.
Thank you. If I may, Mr. Drake, if I may, I'd like to, ask Megan if she would give us the presentation on this, if it's okay with you.
Good.
Okay,
Welcome.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for having me. So what we're talking about is the town currently, in the past, has had 35 million limits in layers for general liability. That's over the $3 million self-insured retention. This year, premiums skyrocketed. It was a very tough market, and the town bound 5 layers, but we totaled it to 30 million limits. So I had the broker go out and look for the additional 5 million. They quoted us at $107,815 for that additional 5 million in coverage. I also today got a quote for this school sports accident insurance. The premium has gone drastically down on that. Obviously, the exposure has gone down with schools not having been open. We're unsure what's happening in the fall, but I think we should keep this in place because we don't know what's going to happen in the fall. We did get a credit for the spring cancellations of school, of sports, of all those things. So we got a 15% credit off of that premium, which totaled, the credit was $25,137. So the premium this year for the school sports accident will be $108,925. We had $210,000 budgeted for that, which is what we had budgeted in the past. And that's down from about $167,000 premium last year. So there's a savings of a total of $101,075 on that premium from what we had budgeted. I just thought I would bring that to everyone's attention. That's close to what this $5 million policy will cost. It's just a matter of transferring some funds if that's what everyone feels we should do.
And then thank you. I'll make a motion. Help me, Roland, for an appropriation as needed to buy the extra layer, the extra $5 million layer, does it require any kind of transfer because it's one policy, savings, et cetera, Roland?
Roland's not there. The answer, I sent an email last week. There's some moving parts here. We have savings somewhere. If there's a shortfall, like there was when we had Frankel as the broker for hundreds of thousands, you're not appropriating more money. It would simply be a transfer from another fixed charge into the 908s, which is the insurances.
Okay, then I guess the motion can be simply, tell me, Megan or Jeff, that we make a motion to make an appropriation for the amount, and the exact amount is?
The amount for the next layer, for the sixth layer, is $107,815.
No, you're not making an appropriation. If you do an appropriation, it has to go to the RTM.
I think you're making a motion to bind an insurance coverage.
Yes.
Within the financial expenses that are already appropriated.
Thank you. Then it's a motion to bind the coverage in that amount. So I'll make that motion.
Seconded.
Seconded by Mr. Raymer. Discussion? So this is a new item, so I'm going to actually ask us to just one step slower. So the town lost a level of coverage, and this is in what is this coverage for?
This is the casualty insurance, so general liability is otherwise known as. So this is what you're using for the most of the lawsuits that come through.
Okay, gotcha. So we've dropped down to 30 million in coverage. This, if we bind this policy, that restores that last layer of 5 million on top of the 30. The financial implication is $110,000, whatever the number is. And you're also reporting back that we have a reduction in insurance premiums due to programming not happening, and just sort of like some of us are seeing in automobiles and stuff. So you're seeing a reduction in insurance of roughly the same amount due to programs that are not happening, and the insurance company's giving us a reduced rate.
Correct.
Changing, different day. Further discussion? Okay.
There's a question from Laura.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Ms. Erickson, your hand is up. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I was just wondering, I mean, this was our plan all along to bind up to 35 million in excess casualty. We had a budgeted number for it. What I'm hearing from Pete is there may need to be a couple of transfers to reach that target. I'm just wondering about the necessity of this motion. Are we required to do this? We're not appropriating any additional money. I think maybe.
I think it's a good question, Ms. Erickson. I just thought I didn't want the audit committee, the 4 of only 12 of us, to make this decision without reporting it to everybody. So I'm
just trying to get clarity on the motion. Are we making a motion to bind for the level of insurance that we had originally expected? Are we getting into how we're making that happen via budget transfers? I'm just asking for a little clarity about what we're doing.
I'll try to answer that. I think we're making to bind a level of insurance coverage from 30 to 35 million on our casualty policy. That's what I believe our motion is.
Can I add to that? I think it's good practice, since that amount of insurance coverage, which was expected to have, is exceeding the budget, and the audit committee did not have a chance to discuss this in their committee, which many of us who are not on the committee would attend. Is probably good practice to raise it at this level so that the full BET knows that we're exceeding the budget and that we either agree or don't agree with that action.
Further discussion? Do I have any? I can call for a roll call vote if needed. Do we think a roll call vote is needed? Anyone against or abstaining? Thank you. I'm going to put that down as 12-0. Megan, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, that brings us to our chair's report. Obviously, I don't think I think we're all realizing that it's pretty busy. We have a lot of things going on. I appreciate, all the debate, and I can tell you one of the side projects that our first selectman has asked me to accompany is he's working on with a committee, a downtown group. And he's looking for, to sort of create his future view of the downtown, and there's some interesting dialogue coming out of that. And I appreciate him on that. Again, you've heard all the updates on everything that's in process, so I think we don't have a meeting. Our next BET meeting was 8 or 9 weeks. For our full BET, our committees are before that, depending on what else happens in the COVID world that we're in. I would say, for those of you who have been attending the Board of Ed meeting, I want to I know Ms. Moriarty and I know Ms. Vassilotis. I can't really tell attending, so I really can't tell who on our board is attending. They are working very, very hard trying to come up with some type of agreement and plan on opening the schools, and there's pressure from the parents and the communications, and some of it we get, some of it we don't. But I just want to say our Board of Ed members are working. I mean, they've had at least a couple meetings a week, plus they have a special group working on that. They have a deadline, I think it's this week, to submit to the state their opening plan, which is not that the state approves or disapproves, but it's a question I think the state is looking for it, and obviously every day something could change from the state on the directive. So as I've said to some of the Board of Ed members, they're doing an incredible, amazing amount of work in literally a couple days. The amount of information that they've added to their plan and what they plan on submitting is incredible. So we should, they know we're there, we're listening. But if you get the chance to hear, I mean, I think after they submit a plan, if there's not changes as we move into early August, they've been doing surveys with their staff. They've been doing surveys with the parents. It's pretty in depth, and it's good to see. I think they're rising to the challenge, and I would say it is a big challenge on their part. So that's just a compliment going to them on that. So with that, minutes.
We have 2 sets of minutes here. Maybe we'll take them separately. You've got June 12th special meeting webinar minutes in your package. I'll move them.
I'll second Bill's motion.
Okay, discussion on the June 12th minutes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? I'll record that, Mr. Drake, as 12-0.
Yep, and we have minutes of our June 15th meeting. The minutes in question are not those in your package from a few days ago, but those that Elaine emailed all of us this morning. We had some very late changes, which were all acceptable and suitable, and I'm in favor of them, but they came late. So just so everybody knows, what I try to do, after the meeting, I get draft minutes from Kathy Sador. I mark them up a bit, and then I send them to all of you as a OneDrive document. I think that's working properly. When you make changes on there, we see them. And once everybody's digested and edited, then they go to Elaine, and then they get posted. You have a second opportunity to edit them once Elaine has posted them, and that's what happened with these June 15th meeting minutes. When that happens, you're going to have I get to say, please approve the minutes, which aren't those that are in the package, but those that you were emailed subsequently. If you can get to them in the first wave, the first opportunity you get them on OneDrive, that'd be best, but you have the right to do it later. So with that said, the minutes that we're approving here today are those that Elaine emailed you this morning, and I'll move them.
Okay.
And I'll second that motion.
Second, Ms. Tarkin, discussion. Everybody got the email this morning, I assume. That's good. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Those minutes have carried. It's like last day of school, but it's not. I sense it's not the last day of our school. I'm sensing we're not going to have that long of a vacation, but I thank everyone. And can I get a motion to adjourn? Ms. Hess, seconded by Mr. Weisbrod.
We're not supposed to do that. I think, sorry about that.
Thank you, everyone, and we'll talk soon. I have a couple phone calls with a couple of you this afternoon. I just have to make one call, and then I'd like to check in with our special project team that we've created today and see if I can get a couple questions answered for myself. Thank you, everyone, and we'll talk soon.
Bye-bye.